My name is Winston Sang, and I'm a associate professor at UC Berkeley School of Public Health, and also a visiting associate professor at Osaka University Division of Health Sciences in the Graduate School of Medicine. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's International Collaborative Research Program on aging and health, and it's a joint symposium between Osaka University and UC Berkeley. We also have Dr. Godai, who will be co-moderating with me today for today's day 2 of the symposium. And it's also my pleasure to welcome Dean A.G. Miyoshi, the Dean of the Division of Health Sciences at Osaka University Graduate School of Medicine, to provide an introduction and a welcome, opening remarks. Please welcome Dean Miyoshi. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen in United States. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen in Japan. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizing committee in this wonderful symposium, especially Professor Kamide, Professor Newhauser, Professor Maus, and Professor Sen. I also appreciate on all participation to this online symposium jointly organized by the UC Berkeley and the Osaka University. Major themes of this symposium: aging, care, and medical economy are critical issues for global community. And Japan is a front runner in the issue of aging society. As we are facing, the society has been changing dramatically because of COVID-19. Under this COVID-19 era, the issues of aging society are getting more significant. Probably, existing approaches become to be an effective and more comprehensive approaches from not only medical, but also social or holistic aspects would be required. Therefore, it is crucial to find keys in order to create happier lives for elderly in terms of public health as sciences. In East Asia or Japan, we have our traditional way of counting years by using 12 animals called the Oriental Zodiac. And this year is the year of ox. I learned from ox as well, hope that issues on aging society would be solved steadily like ox walk. I finish my opening remarks to wish today's symposium would be more vibrant and fruitful for all participants. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dean Miyoshi, for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much.
And certainly from day one, we learned that, these issues are very important globally. This is a global aging issue, and Japan is at the forefront of some of these efforts and initiatives. We also learned that, we can't be aging alone. We really need a community, really a community microsystem. And some of the leading work of Japan doing this work, and also some of our initiatives, innovations in America that we will present today as part of day 2 as we think further about how do we work as a community to support aging and health. And next, I wanted to welcome our first lecturer, Dr. Mai Kabayama, Associate Professor of the Division of Health Sciences at Osaka University Graduate School of Medicine, and who will present on the important role of social capital in aging society. Please welcome Professor Kabayama.
Thank you very much for introducing me, Professor Theng. And thank you very much for this very wonderful opportunity to present here at the symposium between UC Berkeley and the Osaka University. Then I'm going to share my slides here. So then, thank you for the waiting. So I'm going to present about the important role of social capital in aging society. And I'm going to introduce myself. My professional background is public health nurse, and I used to work as a public health nurse in Osaka, and now working at the Osaka University. And my research topics is prevention of loss of independence from physical and social viewpoint, and also healthy aging and lifestyle modification intervention, and health promotion in the community. And now my project is a whole town intervention that aims to healthy life longevity, and by promoting people to measure the blood pressure every morning at home and record it by themselves. So the purpose to prevent stroke and dementia, which is the top 2 reason of long-term care needs in Japan. And this is a character, official character of Nose Town, where I'm doing my intervention, and they are measuring blood pressure. And as Professor Kamide presented last week, Japan has been experiencing a rapidly aging society that is unmatched in the world. The proportion of people aged 65 or older is the highest in the world, and which is 28% last year, and will reach more than 30% at 2025. By examining the demographic makeup, we see the smaller number of young generation. And now the total fertility rate is 1.636. So we have to think about it. Especially in Japan, the number of very elderly population aged 75 years or older is increasing. Extended survival in very old people is not always accompanied by good health. It has been inevitably associated with greater numbers of disabled who need additional support in daily life. And while the number of persons aged 65 or older has increased by approximately 1.5 times over 15 years since 2000, when the long-term care insurance system was established, that a person with care needs has increased by approximately 3 times over the same period. One reason for this may be due to the increased number of very old, and also the socialization of long-term care, because it used to take care by the families, but now it's socialized by the healthcare system. And the main feature of Japanese long-term care insurance is these 4 points. First, the increasing number of people aged 75 and over. And second, increased number of people with dementia. And third, the individual or couple only households with householders over age 65 will increase. And fourth, the number of older people increase rapidly only in urban area, not in the rural area. And Japan is the longest lived country in the world, but the important thing is to extend the healthy life expectancy. And so the 10 years gap is is always existing. So we have to close the gap, this healthy life expectancy and average life expectancy. Now, what's the cause of need for long-term care? In Japan, the number one reason is stroke and dementia. So these are the two top reasons. And do you know that every year Japan has a kanji character of the year? And 2019 was Rei. This is the new imperial era name, Reiwa. So this is last 2019, and last year 2020 is Mitsu, which means close. So that due to the COVID-19, the key words was to avoid three C's, three closed spaces, crowded places, close contact settings. And do you know the year 2011, the year of Great East Japan earthquakes hit in 2011? The word, the character was Kizuna, which is a little bit different meaning from China, but it's in Chinese. Maybe this is the word. So the word was bond or ties, and which is a character reflected the disaster within year. The words was supported people with physically and mentally when the connections between people, homes, things, bodies, and minds were destroyed by the great earthquake. So the word Kizuna was very had an important role in that year. So from many studies, the local communities with high reliability norms, participation rates, and the connections were able to recover quickly from the earthquake. And the communities with high social capital and the community leadership were the most satisfied with community reconstruction and has the fastest recovery speeds, even if they had different cultural economic characteristics. And mutual trust and independence have raised awareness of disaster management and increased the number of volunteers and improved their sense of responsibility. So the word bond or ties was recognized as very, very important from there's any crisis or risk situation. So what's the social capital? And social, I'm now investigating about the social capital and health. And the social capital is a relationship. The relationship between social capital and health has been drawing attention in Japan, and the following four can be mentioned as the background why it is getting the interest. The first is the emergence of social epidemiology, and the second one is the interest in strategy for health inequalities, and the third thing is the interest in the relative income hypothesis, and the fourth is the interest as a population strategy in the prevention of life-related diseases and care. And I started to study this fourth interest, so I'm going to explain this in the next slide. So there's two strategies for preventive medicine, and one is a high risk strategy, and the other is population strategy. And the high risk strategy is intervention in individuals and change their behaviors. And we do that, professionals do the screening and find the high risk people and into the intervention. And it is considered that the lifestyle is as individual responsibility. And for the population strategy, it is intervention in population and society and change people's social environment and change lifestyles, like tobacco tax increase or no smoking in the entire building, and change the environment and change the lifestyle of people. But the high strategy alone is not enough, as Professor Winston mentioned that the diabetes intervention was not very successful. Maybe the individual approach is not enough. Population strategy is maybe also required, and high and health knowledge education is not enough, and evidence-based intervention strategy is needed. So intervention in the environment, community development is required now. We feel the limitations to traditional preventive policies, and we need to intervene in the environment, not the individual. So we feel the potential of social capital from many experiences, such as the recovery process from disasters, as I mentioned last slide. So based on this background, Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare started to emphasize on preventive intervention, not only this blue individual approach, but also on the environment. So Ministry, so this is the concept of goal setting, of improvement of social environment to support and protect health. And this concept of goal setting is written in the Healthy Japan 21st Second. And so that to achieve the extension of healthy life expectancy and reduction of health inequalities, what we will do is to improve the social capital by strengthening the regional ties. So what is social capital? So many here it's not the only the professionals is listening, so I'm going to introduce about the social capital. The conventional way of thinking about the capital is the first is the financial capital, the monetary capital, and the second one is physical capital and human capital. And it is said that there is a fourth capital that connects these three capital, which is called the social capital. So according to the Putnam's seminal work, social capital refers to features of social organization such as trust, norms, and networks that can improve the efficiency of society by facilitating coordinated actions. Previous studies have examined the relationship between social capital and several health outcomes, including all-cause mortality, hypertension, self-rated health, and depression, and most studies found positive relationships. And maybe it may be easier to understand the story familiar with you. Do you know the Buddhist story about long chopsticks? Is anyone who knows? Maybe can you just raise hand? So maybe not so many. So once upon a time, there was the people who were very hungry and almost dead. The Buddha, who pitied those who suffered from hunger, wanted to save them somehow. So he decided to give them food first and foremost. But simply giving it is not good for people. The Buddha thought and set certain conditions when setting food. So he gave people long chopsticks that was long as a meter and said, "You must eat this. If you break your promise and eat by hand, the food will instantly disappear." So then, what will you do? Is anyone? Not. So the people who imagine maybe have to go stay hungry. In the hell, everyone used long chopsticks for themselves, so they couldn't eat well and remained hungry forever. So is there any ideas, or what will you do? What do you think?
It is better to give the food to the next of you, not
Okay.
give to you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that is the good example of a social capital. So in the heaven, they used long chopsticks to feed the person sitting opposite to them, and were very satisfied with the same food. So why did such a difference occur within the same resource? The people of heaven has a spirit of mutuality called this reciprocity and the trust that if I feed, this person will also give me. And we can say this difference is a difference of social capital between the heaven and hell. So they in the heaven they had high trust and reciprocity and used to rich networks. So we could say reciprocity, trust, collaborative behavior, and networks affect happiness and health. In this way, what exists between people is called social capital. So we can see with same resources, but the very different outcomes. So let's move to the topic of health. So as you know, frailty is an intermediate state between robust and disability in older adults. Frail older adults are at high risk of adverse clinical outcomes such as fall, fractures, and hospitalization, and so on. So therefore, we have to make effort to prevent frailty, to prevent progression to disabled status, and to recover from frail status to healthy status. So this is an internet newspaper introduced by the government strategy to prolong the healthy aging in Japan in 2015. The strategy number one is a prevention of loss of independence, and number second is realization of lifelong active society, and so on. And people get together like this and at a community hall close to their home, walking distance, and do exercise every week. And the government is promoting this way style. And this is a picture of the exercise. So public health. So this is a community hall. So the public health nurse, one of the community health professionals, helped to establish a regular gathering in every community. So this is all the people exercising, following the video, and which the local government distributed for every community, and gathering with neighbors every once a week. And they exercise with weight like this. with their wrists and ankles and keep their muscle. And what they do is not only exercising, but also see each other regularly and enjoy chatting and confirm their safety each other. So this is a result I investigated in one of the city, Osaka, by mail questionnaires. So what kind of social participation Japanese doing? And number one is hobby-related group, and the second one is a community-based group. And the figure two shows the sex difference. The yellow bar, the women yellow color were mostly likely to participate in the hobby-related group, and men participate in the alumni association. So for the male, the relationship in the past organization seems to be important for all the Japanese men. And figure 3 shows we found that about 73% of older people participate in some social activities. And in table 4, people who participated in any social activities were significantly better physical and mental health compared to people who didn't. And I'm going to introduce a sonic study, which is a healthy longevity survey, which Professor Gondo and Camille doing. And we had the interview to the centenarians. What did you enjoy when you were 88 years old, which is about 12 years before for them? And they answered a high percentage of centenarians answered they enjoy the friend interaction and also farm work. So community participation and physical exercise. So from here, I will introduce the research investigated in the physical and social factors associated with loss of independence 3 years later among community dwelling older Japanese. So we conducted a large-scale survey targeting for the entire population of older people in the urban city and investigated their long-term care status 3 years later. And the participants were people who live in the survey city, non-disabled and non-demented adults older than 65 years. The survey area, the picture. So we sent a self-administered postal questionnaire, and those were the contents. And we assessed their frailty status using the basic health checklist with 25 items. And also 3 years later, loss of independence level from the city government. And this is a measurement of the questionnaire. For example, question 6 to 10 is a category of asking physical strength. And we asked nutrition status, oral functions, and houseboundness, and cognitive functions. So let's go on to the result. And the valid answer was approximately 23,000 with a high response rate, about 83%. As shown here, 3 years later, 606 required partial support, and about 400 people, 392 requiring complete support. So this is Japanese long-term care system, long-term insurance system, and we categorize long-term care as level 1 and 2 as mild loss of independence, and 3 to 5 as severe loss. And the result was the average age of the participants at baseline was 61.6 years old. And the figure shows the proportion of people satisfied for the long-term care need 3 years later, and it was higher for advanced age. All the participants were independent at the baseline. And the table shows we find the higher percentage of women living alone and no employment, and no social participation was higher for men. So the next, the table shows the logistic regulation analysis stratified for 6 reveals the following to be independent social factors associated with loss of independence 3 years later. So for men and women, loss and non-employment or non-social participation was independently associated with loss of independence. And living alone was also significant for women. And the present illness was only associated with for men. And we compare the mild loss and severe loss. And for the mild loss, living alone, non-employment and no social participation was significantly associated with loss of independence. And the complete support, the severe loss of independence, also non-employment and non-social participation for men and non-social participation for women was independently associated with severe loss of independence. So we could see the social factors were very strongly associated with the loss of independence, regardless of the present illness. And the present illness didn't associate it for women. So the intervention in individual risk factors is very important for loss of independence prevention. But we found that it is effective to enhance social capital more comprehensively. Then I'm almost at the end, but there, sorry, I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to skip a little. But from here, I'd like to introduce some research that goes into the opposite effect of social capital return. And we conducted survey, how do they perceive about the group activity? And we found that we had 3 factors about harmonious and hierarchic and diversity. And our detected aspects closely matched the previously discussed dimensions of social capital. The harmonious is horizontal and bonding, and hierarchic is like a linking and vertical aspect, and diversity is the splitting aspect. So we determined the relation between the health outcomes, and the harmonious was positively related to the physical and mental health, and diversity also positively related to mental health. But the hierarchic was negatively associated with mental health. So the result shows the difference of directions about associations with health between 3 dimensions, even in the social participation. So this is almost the last. So from the find, this is what the healthy centenarian said. He is the highest year of Japanese, but he's not registered with Guinness because no official record. But What he said was, longevity is thanks to God, Buddha, and Sun. It is like the reciprocity and favorite female type, older than me. So maybe he has a sense of social network. And drinking brown sugar shochu is a kind of sake, alcohol, and sake is a secret to longevity. So he may have enjoyed drinking and maybe had a good nutrition and communication. So conclusion slide. The success of sustainable society might depend on the development of social capital in the community, as well as physical function and mental status. So we have to consider about the negative effect of the social capital at the same time. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Professor Kabayama. We will have questions toward the end, but certainly these are really important issues of social capital and older adults. Next, I wanted to introduce our first research report presentation from a student. And I want to introduce the doctoral course student of nursing, Nonglak Klimpudan with Osaka University. And her presentation entitled Influence of Social Factors on Heart Diseases and Frailty. Please welcome her.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Professor Winston, for your kind introduction. I'm very honored to be here. You can call me Jeff. Actually, I'm from Thailand. So today, okay, I would like to share my screen. Okay. Actually, I have been work as a nurse in ICU for a long time, and then I just moved to be a nurse instructor in the university for a couple of years before I'm studying in Japan. So I had a few experiences working on social factor, but I think there are many dimensions of social factors on health that I'm interested in. So today I would like to present my finding in the topic of the influence of social factors on heart diseases and frailty. That was part of my study entitled The Association Between Heart Disease, Social Factors, and Physical Frailty in Community Developing Older Population, the SONIC study. This is the overview of today's presentations. First, I would like to address the situation of aging society. As you can see, the speed of population aging time in many countries are rapidly increasing, especially in Asian countries, including Japan and Thailand. Even though older people are living longer, but it will be followed by increasing in aging-related diseases, especially heart disease and physical frailty. In a community, we could detect coronary heart disease around 17% and physical frailty around 4 to 59%. Moreover, many studies indicated these diseases linked to heart disease and physical frailty. It is challenging that healthcare providers must take emphasis on this situation. First, let's move to the frailty. Frailty is a genetic syndrome consists of 5 domains, including weakness, slowness, physical inactivity, exhaustion, and unintentional weight loss. Three or more abnormality will classify as frailty according to Linda Free's criteria. But in our study, we focus on weakness and slowness that represent two biological frailty or sarcopenia. These two are simple, powerful, valid, and reliable. Next, let's move to heart disease. Heart disease is a common disease in older adults and is second cause of death among Japanese, especially ischemic heart disease. The adverse outcome of heart disease such as disability, mortality, and also linked to physical frailty. There are many differences from heart disease. The most common cause is atherosclerosis. This bar graph, you will see the prevalence of coronary heart disease is increasing with advanced aging, both male and females. And this slide, you will see each heart disease form have frailty, and the prevalence are vary according to measurements. Moreover, many studies indicated that frail patients with heart diseases could turn to heart failure earlier than without frailty. Frail patients with heart diseases has worse prognosis than non-frail patients and have a high risk of adverse outcomes such as fall, long-term care needs, hospitalization, disability, and premature mortality. There are many factors influence frailty, including demographic and social factors, clinical factors, lifestyle, and biological factors such as inflammatory mediator. The light color boxes has proven that strongly associated with frailty in the previous study. And now social trend, demographic, family structure, and lifestyle are changing. Older people tend to live alone, particularly in Japan. However, few studies have examined the effect of social factors on physical frailty. That was the reason why I want to know what's the association between social factors and physical frailty among older with heart diseases. And I also add some social factors included social inactivity, which represent physical activity, and living area in the study. This became the study framework. Actually, this study has two purposes, but in this time, I will focus on the second purpose. That was to examine the association between social factors and physical frailty among older with heart disease. The study draw the data from the SONIC study. The SONIC is a longitudinal study of the health and longevity in older populations. The SONIC terms stand for septuagenarians, octogenarians, nonagenarians, and investigation with centenarians. The survey started in 2010 to investigate the older people who live in the community, traveling from 4 cities in eastern and west part of Japan, cover for urban and countryside, and have been tracking every 3 years. This study was a cross-sectional study that recruited 1,882 persons in 73, 83, and 93 years old, or the second wave, which have the complete data of heart disease form. Parkinson's disease was excluded from the study. Physical frailty in this study means one or both abnormality of walking speed or grip strength. Slow walking speed was classified as less than 1 meter per second, and weak grip strength was classified as less than 18 kilograms in females and less than 26 kilograms in male. Heart diseases were assessed based on self-reported, and then they also were asked about the specific type of heart disease too. For social factors cover for the economic status. We measure the stratification of household income, level of education, living alone, residential area. For social interaction based on 2 questions as how often are you going outdoors and how often you have direct interaction with relatives or friends in a week. A higher score means they have more often going outside or more often through their interaction with friends. For other measurements, diabetes, hypertension were classified based on Japanese society guidelines. Smoking was divided into 3 groups: never, current, and ex-smoker. Stroke data measured from self-report. Albumin level from blood test at the survey site. Multiple logistic regressions was used to test the association. Move to the result part. This figure shows the prevalence of specific type of heart disease by age stratification. Most of the types were angina pectoris, atrial fibrillations, and myocardial infarction. The prevalence of angina pectoris and heart failure increased with age. This figure, you will see the prevalence of slow walking speed and physical frailty were higher in heart disease group. This table shows the characteristic of the total participant according to heart diseases. What you can see, a total 224 participants were reported with heart diseases. And the prevalence of heart disease increased with age. Individuals with heart disease were more likely to be men, have diabetes, hypertension, stroke, lower albumin, lower walking speed, and lower grip strength in female. For social factors, in the frequency of going outdoors, we can see those with heart disease has a higher prevalence of not going outdoors often than without heart disease. For other social factors as frequency of direct interaction with friends, living alone, living area, education level, and economic status were not found significant differences. This table shows the multiple logistic regression of social factors associated with physical frailty in the subject with heart diseases. As we can see, living alone and frequency of direct interaction with relatives or friends were associated with physical frailties. Those with heart disease who living alone has a 10 times list of slow walking speed. And those who more often direct interaction with friends has a lower list of slow walking speed. From the results, we can summarize that among subjects with heart disease, those who live alone were at a list of physical frailty, especially slow walking speed. And those with heart disease who has direct interaction with friends more often were at a lower list of physical frailty. The possibility mechanism that could explain the association between social factors and physical frailty could be from social interaction could increase physical activity and improve mental status. Those who live alone were more likely to have low physical activity, poor social support, and lower healthy dietary consumption. In conclusion, living alone and social contact were related to physical frailty, particularly slow walking speed in subjects with heart disease. We need a longitudinal study to clarify the causal relationship between social factors and physical frailty. Finally, I will end with the photo with social interaction among older people. Even though we now need social distancing due to COVID-19 pandemic, however, I fully hope that after we can successfully control COVID-19, we can come to closer again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jia-san. If the audience have any questions or comment, please type it out. I'd like to welcome next speaker, Miss Motoko Nogami. She is a master course student. She enthusiastically works on her studies. She will talk about association between social factors and hypertension management in older people, the SONIC study. Miss Nogami, go and get started, please.
Thank you for your introduction. I'll share with my slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Motoko Nogami, the first year of master student. Thank you for your giving me this opportunity today. Let's start with the introduction. This graph shows the aging rate of major countries in the world. Currently, Japanese aging rate is the highest in the world. In 2020, that number recorded 28.7. Japanese major diseases requiring long-term care were dementia, stroke, and heart disease. Especially vascular dementia, stroke, and heart disease are common type of hypertension-related diseases. In 2017, in hypertension-related disease patients, the proportion of 65 years older is about 80%. And in this, 75 years older is more 60%. So in older people, it is very important to control blood pressure. Related factors for blood pressure management are a lot, but association between social factors and blood pressure management is not clear. So this study objective is to assess the association between social factors and blood pressure control in community-dwelling elderly hypertensive patients by age and sex. This study is a part of a prospective cohort study called the SONIC study. SONIC study was already explained by previous speaker. As one addition, SONIC study is carried out in two regions of Western and Eastern Japan. Each region was composed of both urban and rural areas. This study has been ongoing since 2010. Since 2013, we started follow-up surveys on a 3-year cycle. Since Web 2, we have started getting enough social factors questions, and in 90s, the number of participants is small. So I am using the data from 2013 and 2014 in Web 2. Analyzed participants. We are judging hypertensive participants from their medication record and hearing by medical doctors or nurses. Definition of blood pressure controlled in this study following the Japanese Society of Hypertension in the year 2019. Blood pressure control cutoff criteria in 70 years old was 130 and 80 millimeter of mercury, and in 80 years old was 140 and 90 millimeter of mercury. The social factor in this study is economic status, marital status, frequency of going out, and living area. I divided economic status into good or poor status, two groups by the questionnaire. This slide shows the participants in this study. 1625 people initially joined at the baseline. 836 people using antihypertensive drugs. 187 people were missing data. So 649 people were included in the present study. Adjustment variables are on this slide. BMI, smoking, heavy drinking, MOCA-J score, total cholesterol, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and outcome is blood pressure controlled. This is a statistical analysis. The basic characteristics analyzed by using descriptive statistics, while the association between social factors and blood pressure control analyzed by using multiple logistic regression analysis. This is a result session. Table 1 shows that the prevalence of hypertension was higher in 83 years old, but uncontrolled blood pressure was higher in 73 years old with significant difference. And table 2, the prevalence of hypertension and uncontrolled blood pressure in 73 years old were higher in male with significant difference. I am going to show the results stratified by age groups and sex. This table 3 showed the comparison of basic characteristics according to blood pressure control status in 73 years old male. What you can see, the poor economic status showed the higher in uncontrolled group, while stroke showed higher in controlled group. While in 73 years old female, in the marital status showed higher in controlled blood pressure. In 83 years old male, the total cholesterol showed higher in uncontrolled blood pressure, and heart disease showed higher prevalence in controlled blood pressure. In 83 years old female, in the rural area is showed higher prevalence of uncontrolled blood pressure. Table 7 shows the result of multiple logistic regression analysis in 73 years old, both male and female. The result revealed that in male, poor economic status had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure, while stroke had a lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. In female, marriage status had a lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. The table 8 shows the result of multiple logistic regression in 83 years old, both male and female. The results show that in male, higher cholesterol had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure, and heart disease had a lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. In female, heavy drinking, higher BMI, and diabetes had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. Summary and discussion in 73 years old. In male, individuals with poor economic status had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure, and individuals with stroke had a lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. In female, individuals who get married had lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. So, in this time, my discussion, male with poor economic status may not be in the hospital or have access to expensive medication. And it is considered that blood pressure of stroke patient is strictly controlled by medication management. Female with getting married may tend to be careful about their diet for their families. In 83 years old in male, individuals with higher total cholesterol had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. And individuals with heart disease had a lower odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. In female, individuals with heavy drinking, higher BMI, diabetes had a higher odds of uncontrolled blood pressure. So, lifestyles such as dietary intake or medication management are more likely to be related to blood pressure control, regardless of social factors. Regarding discussion, I will read papers and study deeper. Conclusion. In this study, we classified the association between social factors and blood pressure control status among older people with hypertension in community dwelling older people in which association between social factors and blood pressure control were different in age and sex. For male with poor economic status, generic drugs may be one of the measures for uncontrolled blood pressure. In the future, it is necessary to investigate the association between social factors and blood pressure management in detail. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nogami-san.
Because we don't have much enough time to discuss about the presentation. So please chat to the presenter, please. Okay, let's next. I would like to introduce Professor Genta Kawahara. He's Executive Director, Vice Chancellor for International Exchange in Osaka University. So he's having special greeting for this symposium. Thank you very much, Professor Kawahara. Please start.
Thank you very much for very kind introduction. Good evening and good morning, distinguished participants, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to be here in this significant symposium between UC Berkeley and Osaka University. I'm Genta Kawahara. I'm in charge of global engagement as a Vice President of Osaka University. And I would like to take this opportunity to extend my most sincere appreciation to Professor Chen and Professor Maus, the School of Public Health, UC Berkeley, and Professor Kamide and Professor Miyoshi, the Division of Health Sciences, Osaka University. And UC Berkeley is our most important partner institutions. And in 2012, UC Berkeley and Osaka University agreed on inter-university academic exchange. Since then, we have exchanged young researchers, students, professors, while our promoting research collaboration. And in 2018, we have renewed our inter-university academics exchange, and Osaka University have established North American Center of Osaka University in Berkeley. And our office in the building of Skydeck, just in front of the BART station, downtown Berkeley. And it is also very close to UC Berkeley, especially we are very close to the building of School of Public Health, I understand. So we would be very grateful if UC Berkeley professors, researchers, and students would kindly visit us in our office. Of course, we are under the bad affection of the COVID-19 pandemic, but in the quiet nature, please. And now we are finishing or completing our inter-faculty student exchange agreement between the College of Engineering, UC Berkeley, and Graduate School of Engineering Science, Osaka University. And I would largely expect that the collaboration between School of Public Health and Graduate School, the Division of Health Sciences should be the key to our institutional collaboration between UC Berkeley and Osaka University. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kawahara. So it's a very great support for our good internship between Osaka University and UC Berkeley School of Public Health. So thank you very much for participating. Also, you are very busy person, but I think I appreciate as a representative of this symposium relatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to visit all of you again in UC Berkeley. I hope quite near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to welcome next speaker, Professor Marlon Maus. He is a professor at University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health, and also a director of Dr. PH program. He will give us a special lecture on physical activity as a determinant of healthy aging. Professor Maus, could you go ahead, please?
Very good. Thank you very much. And much of what I'm covering has already been covered, but first of all, I wish to thank Dr. Godai and Dr. Seng for their introductions, and also especially thank Dr. Kamide for organizing and inviting us to participate. Also, I wish to thank Dr. Kawahara and Dr. Miyoshi for helping make our visit possible. And finally, Dr. Kabayama and the faculty and the students for giving us really the honor of speaking at Osaka University. And I hope very much that in the future, not very far, maybe the symposium will be in person. First of all, I would like to say that I am an ophthalmologist, and I specialized in oculoplastic surgery. That is fixing orbital trauma and other diseases. Before coming to Berkeley, I was the director of the residency program for eye surgery in Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia. And then I realized that many of our patients were suffering diseases because of social and economic factors. Many were older adults with visual impairment. So I decided to become a doctor in public health so that I could study and make a difference in the populations not just individuals. So, as has been mentioned in the previous presentations, successful aging depends on many interrelated factors. We heard from previous speakers about the importance of social capital in an aging society, about frailty as a determinant of disability, and many other aspects of aging. Since individuals 65 years and older are the fastest growing segment of the population in the US and worldwide, ensuring a healthy lifestyle is essential for successful aging. That is one that prevents and helps and reverses the disability states. One of the most accepted models for healthy aging is the one from Rowe and Kahn, and it has three overlapping areas: avoidance of disease and risk factors, active engagement with life, and the maintenance of physical and cognitive activity. The question is, how can this model be adapted practically for our patients and for at-risk older populations? One of the answers is that we must act in the following areas. First of all, assuring that the home and the built environment, as was mentioned in one of the presentations today, for the people is conducive to allowing them to age in a healthy way. The environment should contribute, not hinder, staying healthy. Maintaining the activities that are integral to being an independent person. Think of social groups, interpersonal relationships, a shared sense of identity. In short, social capital. Enabling those who support healthy aging, and finally, making sure that people maximize their chances of avoiding disease. So today, I would like to concentrate on what may be one of the most important modifiable factors contributing to all aspects of healthy aging, and that is physical activity. As Professor Kay mentioned, physiological aging is inescapable. However, the functional decline in key variables such as stamina, strength, balance, and flexibility can be offset by participation in a program of regular exercise. Here again, you can see the curve showing that the physiologic reserves decrease with age. That means that if the physiologic limit curve can be maintained or increased, it will more likely compensate for stressors and restore homeostasis, meaning that it is possible to intervene, as Professor Kay showed in his lecture, to improve the odds for healthy aging. So many of you may be familiar already with the idea that exercise plays a role in both the prevention and the treatment of various conditions and diseases. More and more often, exercise is being thought as a medicine that can be prescribed. Scientific evidence supports this idea. Some of this evidence are many studies that show what role exercise plays in the prevention and treatment of obesity, of heart disease, of diabetes, cancer, and its implications for aging and the brain. Later on, I will describe a program called Exercise is Medicine. So now let's look at the diseases facing us in the 21st century. What are the leading causes of death today? Professor Tseng mentioned in his lecture that earlier in the 20th century, most diseases were infectious in nature. Vaccination and antibiotics, together with clean water and clean air, took care of almost most of that mortality. Today, the answer is chronic diseases, such as CVD, diabetes, cancer, and strokes. But you know, in public health, we like to ask, what are the root causes of these diseases? Meaning, not only what is in the death certificate, but what actually killed the patient? Well, it turns out that the root causes of these diseases after tobacco are poor diet and a lack of physical activity. These are the real major causes of death in the US and, of course, in many aging countries in the 21st century. And as we can see, those related to the lack of physical activity always rank in the top 2. So that is why more and more physicians ask the patient as part of their exam, how sedentary are you? The reason is that physical inactivity, the lack of physical activity, is one of the 10 risk factors that contribute to the appearance of chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, cancer, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. In the United States alone, 300,000 annual deaths result from inactivity and poor diet. 20% of all deaths of people 35 years and older are attributed to a lack of physical activity. We now have defined what is called the sitting disease. This includes some statistics, such as an average of 11 hours of sitting per day. Women are more likely to be sedentary, a very significant financial cost of over $24 billion in extra medical spendings, and 65% of Americans watch 2 or more hours of television every day. So, as we can see in this study from the Mayo Clinic, prolonged TV watching results in a 61% greater risk of dying compared to individuals who watched less than 1 hour per day. The same can be said for people who sit in front of their computers. Does that sound familiar? I'm sure many of us fit in that description, and those who work from home. So now we have to wonder if in a few years after the COVID-19 pandemic is over, maybe we will see an increase in diseases which are related for lack of activity. Here we can see the cumulative total mortality from low physical activity. And as you can see, it becomes more and more pronounced with age. That is exactly the time in life when physical activity can also make the greatest difference in terms of mortality. And just as an aside, one other reason why physical activity is important is that if you look at the increased life expectancy since 1900, only 5 years are attributed to medical care. So as I mentioned before, most of the increase was the result of things like housing and clean water. So this emphasizes how the modification of our environment and our lifestyle has a much greater effect on longevity than actual medical care. And I'm saying that as a doctor. This is a worldwide problem, and many studies have shown similar results in many countries. Here I put an example from Dr. Ueshima and others from 2010, which suggests a protective effect of physical activity in all-cause and cardiovascular disease mortality among Japanese elderly people with pre-existing disease. So, there are many ways in which physical activity prevents disease and frailty. In fact, here we can see that physical inactivity pretty much affects every organ and every system in the body. We will look at some of that, which are particularly pertinent to healthy aging. And that is, we will just shortly touch on obesity, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, depression, anxiety, and cognitive dysfunction. There is a special case for physical activity in assisted living. While nursing homes provide a dependent relationship with the residents, remember, assisted living focuses on promoting autonomy and independence. However, with the increasing aging population, the number of residents in assisted living has increased multimorbidities and frailty. Studies have shown that in general, assisted living residents engage in very low levels of physical activity. And that, of course, results in increased risk of medical conditions, which we have discussed, and also in frailty. Assisted living is the fastest growing residential care setting for older adults in the United States. Close to 800,000 adults are in assisted living. That means that some of the key challenges are to maintain levels of physical activity and functional ability as this population ages. That means maintaining many of the daily activities of living, such as walking, swimming, and dressing. Studies show that some of the factors that influence physical activity among assisted living residents include their mood, the satisfaction with the staff, and the social support for exercise. Some of the covariates include gender, cognition, depression, and comorbidities. So let's first consider obesity. Even though there are many variables that contribute to the risk of obesity, and those include genetic, medical, hormonal, and cultural factors, the fact is that the main variable is a greater caloric input than output. That means you eat more and you exercise less. That includes also very poor dietary choices, such as fast food together with a sedentary lifestyle. Those are the ones that contribute to obesity. Here is an example of what goes into our bodies. This is a hamburger in the United States. It only cost $5.49. And this hamburger, one hamburger, provides 1,410 calories. It takes 7 hours of walking to get rid of 1,410 calories. And of course, in the United States, unfortunately, like most junk food, is usually sold in low-income areas where poor people do not have access to healthy food. As you can see, the obesity and diabetes trends in the United States are very clear. Look at how the map turns more and more red from 1994 to 2010. Today in the United States, about 1/3 of the population is considered obese. And diabetes is the other aspect of the obesity epidemic. We actually now talk about a new disease called the diabesity epidemic. And almost 27% of 65-year and older adults have diabetes, and many, many more are at risk for diabetes. This syndrome, however, is not just an American problem. Look on the left side, the slide. It shows a worldwide epidemic. 25% of the world's population is obese, and 7% have diabetes. This is one of the negative consequences of the increasing affluence and richness in many parts of the developing world. I am sure you are all aware that one country that has remained with the lowest prevalence of obesity is Japan. Only 4.2% of Japanese have a body mass index over 30, which is the international standard for obesity. But 40% of Americans do. Over 66% of Americans have a BMI over 25, which makes them overweight, but only 24.7% of Japanese. There are many reasons why this may be true. The Japanese consume 200 calories less and in general tend to be more physically active. The trends in obesity are seen both in younger and older adults. But I said before, this affects more with advancing age. So older people are more affected by obesity than younger people. And one of the great tragedies today is that childhood obesity is growing so much that it will probably shorten the life expectancy of a whole generation. In here, we can see the modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors for developing diabetes, type 2 diabetes. One of the main modifiable risk factors is physical inactivity, along with obesity. There is much evidence that the best prevention or treatment for diabetes is physical activity. I will not say much more about coronary heart disease, except that like diabetes, it is related to obesity and physical inactivity. Once more, the most important modifiable risk factors have been shown to be physical inactivity, such as in the Framingham study. And as we will see later, this factor can actually be modified in any age group, even the oldest. Many of the other speakers have mentioned in their presentation the rapid increase in the 65 years and older population. Ms. Ohata and Ms. Nonglek today, and of course, Professor Kay, discussed the development of the frailty syndrome or phenotype, which is considered a very strong predictor for disability, morbidity, and mortality in older adults. So I will not go into more details since they were very nicely covered in the previous presentations. As we see in this chart, one of the key indicators for poor prognosis in healthy aging is the development of frailty. There are many contributors to developing this syndrome, but in sedentary populations, frailty is most likely due to the reduction of skeletal muscle mass, which, as was mentioned, is known as sarcopenia, and a decrease in mineral bone density, or osteopenia. As Ms. Ohata discussed in her report of the locomotive syndrome and frailty study, the loss of muscle strength and frail bones then results in an increase in falls and fractures, which in turn increases frailty, mortality, and disability with older populations. Here we can see the loss of skeletal muscle mass and function with advancing age. And this is a major component of the frailty syndrome. After age 50, sedentary men and women can lose up to 10% of their muscle mass every decade. And that becomes even more after age 70. In assisted living settings, the combination of a decrease in muscle strength and of bone mineral density can result in an impaired ability to maintain balance. And that is one of the causes for the risk of falling and fractures and death, as I mentioned. The results of limitations in mobility is a loss of independence and quality of life. Participation in social networks, as we saw today, is very often dependent on mobility, since there are no available pharmacological interventions for sarcopenia. There are no medications that you can give for sarcopenia. That only leaves us with non-pharmacologic interventions, and that is our only option. Among these interventions, physical activity has been demonstrated to be effective in improving muscle mass and function and preventing disability and frailty in older persons. Participation in regular exercise is one of the only ways to offset some of the negative effects of sedentary aging. A very important point is that this can happen at any age, and there are beneficial effects of participation in physical activity even when you start very late in life. Notice in this study that all age groups who were unfit and remained sedentary, they have the highest risk of death. Those who were fit when young and stay fit all of their life, they have the lowest risk of death. But also notice, and this is very important, that even after age 60, when a sedentary person started regular exercise programs, the risk of death dropped by over 40%. Other studies have shown that even men and women in their 90s, nonagenarians, still demonstrate training adaptations in muscle mass and strength. In this study of frail 90-year-olds, it demonstrated that after training, many of the functional outcomes measured improved, and the incidence of falls was significantly lower in the intervention group. This allows these individuals in their 9th decade to stay mobile and maintain an independent lifestyle and a high quality of life in later years. This can delay the need for assisted living, or if they are in assisted living, prevent progression to disability and confinement to a wheelchair. As we mentioned, osteoporosis, which is the decrease in bone mineral density, it results in frail and brittle bones that fracture easily. While it affects millions of people, 80 to 90% are women. Some of the non-modifiable risks include menopause and a family history. But again, modifiable risk factors include a sedentary lifestyle and also low calcium, vitamin D, and of course, smoking. So if you stop smoking, that is a modifiable factor. However, exercise, particularly weight-bearing exercise, has the effect of stimulating calcium deposition in the bone due to mechanical stress which is placed on the bone. Studies have shown that the intensity of exercise does not have to be very high to obtain a health benefit. As you can see from the chart on the right, that can be the difference between independent living and dependence. Even a moderate exercise intervention at the right time can significantly lower the risk factors for all-cause mortality. On the left side of the slide, there is an example of how, by doubling the number of steps per day, reduce the risk of death in women by 40%. In sedentary males and females, maximal oxygen consumption declines with advancing age. And we know this is a very important measure of fitness. Adults over 65 years who have maintained a lifetime of regular exercise have double the VO2 max than those with sedentary lifestyles. But I want you to notice that even those adults starting aerobic training programs after age 65 can increase significantly their VO2 max and their cardiovascular endurance. So this results in improved stamina for activities associated with daily living, such as gardening, shopping, golfing, cooking, bathing. Finally, there is great evidence of the beneficial effects of exercise on the brain. Studies have shown that exercise can help maintain or improve cognitive function, reduce age-related dementia, including Alzheimer's, and treat symptoms of Parkinson's disease and lessen the severity of depression and anxiety. It also reduces the negative effects of chronic stress. The main factors that contribute and maintain a healthy brain include regular exercise, a healthy diet, mental stimulation, stress management, sleep quality, and, as we saw today, active social life. When we look at age-related neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, there is protein aggregation. It is also known that exercise stimulates activity and it increases blood flow to the brain by as much as 20%. Maintaining blood flow is critical for the prevention of neurodegenerative disease. Other modifiable risk factors for Alzheimer's include hypertension, high cholesterol, obesity, and diabetes, all of which are also helped by regular exercise. In the study on the right, older participants who exercised 3 or more times per week had a higher probability of being free of dementia than those who exercise fewer than 3 times per week. Worldwide, 350 million people, according to the WHO, suffer from depression, and older adults are especially susceptible to depressed mood feelings of sadness, fatigue, sleep disruption, changes in appetite and body weight, reduced interest in life events, hopelessness, and even suicide. Many studies continue to demonstrate the value of exercise as a treatment for depression. Randomized controlled studies show that exercise has a large and significant effect on an older population with depression. The exercise can be moderate, and it can be mixed aerobic and anaerobic, and usually should have a supervised format. That is, somebody is supervising the older adults when they're doing exercise. Even 2 aerobic exercise sessions per week for 20 to 30 minutes are sufficient to significantly reduce depression and tension scores in men and women after only 12 weeks. Most likely, one of the mechanisms that regular exercise helps maintain cognitive function, reduces dementia and depression is, as I said before, the enhanced blood flow and vascular function and brain stimulation during exercise. In summary, physical activity is one of the pillars of healthy brain in addition to diet, stimulation, stress management, and social interaction. Next, I would like to mention a program that was started several years ago by the American College of Sports Medicine. And by the way, I did the translations using Google Translate, so if they're very wrong, I apologize. It was started by the American College of Sports Medicine, and it is named Exercise is Medicine. This program tries to encourage the incorporation of regular physical activity, into all healthcare decisions. It provides guidance to physicians and healthcare providers on how to assess the physical activity levels of their patients and to develop and use exercise as prescriptions, which are based on the health status and the current activity level of their patients. They also promote referrals of the patients to certified exercise professionals. Now, let me see if I can show, let's see, a video. Hopefully this will work.
Meet Jane. Jane's a hardworking individual with a chronic health condition. Jane wants to get healthier, but it seems like there's always another obstacle to overcome. What if we gave Jane a support system and made exercise as routine as taking her daily prescriptions? The solution? Exercise is medicine. EIM brings together patients, physicians, and exercise professionals. It creates trust, establishes accountability, and produces positive health outcomes. Here's how it works. Jane visits her doctor for a checkup. Before EIM, Jane's doctor may have simply advised her to exercise more often. Now, with additional resources and a stronger support system, Jane's doctor can write a prescription for exercise and refer her to an EIM credentialed exercise professional. Jane's exercise professional works with her to provide the structure, routine, and motivation she needs to achieve her health goals. When Jane visits her doctor again, her chronic condition has improved. This means a happier doctor, a healthier Jane, and a positive, lasting impact on her quality of life. Not only could EIM help Jane, it could help millions of people who have a chronic disease, an epidemic that accounts for 86% of our healthcare spending. Exercise is medicine, lowers costs for healthcare systems and patients, while also providing important resources for physicians and exercise professionals. A compelling solution for a healthier world. Ready to get involved? Here's how.
Thank you. I'm glad it worked. So Exercise is Medicine has a special program just for older adults. It looks to identify strategies and resources to integrate physical activity assessment and promotion in healthcare and community settings with older adults and older adult populations. The program develops educational trainings for providers, screening tools to ensure safety during exercise training, promoting the use of evidence-based interventions in both healthcare and community settings. This program has been developed for all stages in life. It is used by universities to help students that are facing physical and mental problems by promoting physical activity as one of the treatment modalities. This is called Exercise is Medicine on Campus. Students with diabetes, obesity, hypertension, or depression are referred for instruction in physical activity as part of their treatment. At UC Berkeley, we have a growing program in which an interdisciplinary team is promoting it with the support of the chancellor of the university, and the program also aims to make movement part of daily campus culture. Also to assess physical activity at every student visit, when they visit their doctors, and to provide students with the tools necessary to strengthen healthy physical activity habits. Also, it connects the university health providers with university health fitness specialists. EIM is now in universities and centers all over the world, including Hong Kong. And since 2018, there is an Exercise is Medicine Japan National Center. It is hosted by the Japanese Association of Exercise Therapy and Prevention under the leadership of Director Yutaka Kimura, and the EIM Japan National Center under Professor Shinji Sato. Other supporters of this program are the Japan Sports Agency and the Tokyo Medical Association. One example of the program, and it's a pilot, is to encourage providers to refer older adults for exercise when they are visiting public baths. This is an area that will continue to grow rapidly, both in Japan and in the United States, because of its success in bringing physical activity into the lives of older adults as a treatment and prevention of diseases. I think there is also the opportunity to bring EIM, Exercise is Medicine on Campus, to Osaka University, because I may be wrong, but I don't think it is there yet. So maybe that is something for the future. And finally, I would like to present a pilot study that we conducted in a senior center in Berkeley. The project was evidence-based on the many studies that show that physical activity is a key way to address many of the problems faced by older adults as they age. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Seng was a part of the team doing this study. As we have seen, physical inactivity, which leads to obesity and diabetes, is responsible for 3.2 million deaths each year, according to the WHO. The CDC has proposed at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity every week to prevent that, to ameliorate that. And the statistics show that 65 to 80% of older adults have sedentary behaviors and engage in almost no leisure time physical activity. With the understanding that walking can be the physical activity that enhances the well-being of older adults, we proposed using mobile technology to address this issue. It is known that older adults are actually adopting and using mobile technology at a much greater rate than it was expected even just some years ago. They are using mobile technology much more. We also know that interactive gaming has been used very successfully with both younger and older adults as a way to increase the use and adoption of technology. That is, you use games to make older adults use technology. Finally, there are many successful programs already in existence that encourage community walking. For example, neighborhood walking groups. Do you remember Professor Mai's lecture today? The key aspect of this project is social participation in a physical activity. Our goal was to encourage community walking by using an accessible technology, such as a tablet, iPad, or smartphone, and to make the program very accessible by placing it near where people live or recreate, making the game entertaining by combining a word game and a physical activity game. It is important that the game be challenging because older adults seem to like competition. Socialization is a very important part that will need to be addressed because of COVID restrictions in the near future. For the pilot study, we wanted to know if the physical activity continued beyond the game setting. Also, could this pilot be generalized to other older populations? Would it work in different settings, such as rehabilitation settings? We also wanted to set up the methods for evaluating and testing cognitive and physical function and performance. Finally, could there be a synergy where combining physical activity game together with a cognitive function game, the effects were actually larger. They were multiplicative, so much larger. The game is played in small teams of 3 people, and we chose an iPad as the mobile technology. The different teams could play at the same time or at different times, and they would start from the point of origin, which in this case was the senior center. Each team would walk a designated route and finish at the starting point. Whenever they reached one of 6 milestones, the iPad would collect 4 letters, which were kept for later use. Once they finish the walk, the teams would sit together in the center, in the senior center, and they had 15 minutes to generate as many words as possible. The points, each letter has a point, a number of points. So at the end, all the points were added and a record was kept. At the end of the month, we gave prizes to the teams that had achieved the greatest number of miles walked and the ones that had achieved the highest number of points from the word game. Here is an example of 3 highly competitive seniors playing the game after they finished walking. There you can see them making words. As part of the study, we also did a pre and post evaluation for cognitive and physical function using qualitative and quantitative measures. And this included things like sitting and standing, strength, and standard measures, which were mentioned today in other lectures. As we can see in the first figure, there was a very significant trend in the scores obtained by the participants. In addition, the attrition rate dropped after the first weeks, and it stabilized very close to 0. The result of the pilot project showed an excellent rate of adoption by people attending the senior center. What do you think was the most welcome part of the project? You mentioned it. It was the response to the social interaction. The participants reporting having an increase in participation in physical activity from the baseline during the program. Of course, due to the small numbers of the pilot project, we really were unable to draw any conclusions regarding changes in cognitive and physical activity. However, anecdotally, the participants expressed great enjoyment and joy at sharing the game with others and being part of a new community. In fact, when we terminated the program, many of them asked us if we could continue the program because they had made so many new friends and they enjoyed walking and playing with them. Now we are planning a future development using new technologies, which will hopefully allow us to adapt the game so that it can be played individually at a distance and maybe still maintain a community feeling in response to COVID and for greater dissemination. We are actually talking to a technology partner that will help develop and scale up the next generation of WordWalk. Maybe we could have a collaboration with Osaka University and develop a Japanese version of WordWalk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mouse, for your presentation. As we are getting closer to the end, I wanted to introduce Professor Kei Kamide, Professor and Vice Dean of the Division of Health Sciences at Osaka University, to give closing remarks, and if there's any time for questions and answers.
Okay, I'd like to have a closing remarks as a representative of this joint web symposium organizers. So ladies and gentlemen, I believe that all of you have well done through the 2-day symposiums. It is my great pleasure that you had the enhancement of knowledges and fruitful discussions about healthy aging and successful assisted living. Thank you very much for having the wonderful special lecture, Professor Linda Neuhauser, Professor Marlon Mouse from UC Berkeley School of Public Health. We appreciated very much for the kind opening remarks, Dean of Health Science Division, Osaka University, Professor Miyoshi, and special greeting for this symposium, the Executive Director, Vice Chancellor, Professor Kawahara. Thank you very much for the informative lecture, Professor Winston Sen and Professor Mike Kabayama. Thank you very much for the research report, 3 graduate students. Finally, I would like to express my appreciation to all of participants in this web symposium. Today is over 80 participants. We are so happy to have many participants. In this year's symposium, we focused on general and latest knowledges about healthy aging and wellness of the assisted living from expert speakers. About next year's symposium, we are planning to take up more developmental and evolutionary research presentations. Please participate in the next year symposium. I would like to close my remarks wishing the future prosperity of all of the participating. Thank you very much for your attention.